Hey everybody, welcome back to Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com and here on my YouTube channel. And this is part 2 of our 3-part series where we're taking a listen and comparing the Burl Audio B2 Bomber, that sound of those converters compared to the PreSonus Quantum 4848. If you have missed part 1, click the link in the description box below where you can go download the files that we're going to listen to in this video, and you can bring them into your DAW and you can listen to the 2 comparisons. And we did the blind test. This time I'm going to give the big reveal. I'm going to tell you which track was which, and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts around this. So before we get started, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. It really does help, and I really do appreciate it. Also, go out to mixingmusicanalog.com if you want to check out what I have going on over there, including my 2 hybrid mixing courses. Link will be in the description box below. Check out hybrid mixing. I think you're really going to dig it. Okay, so before we get started here again, no, this is not a sponsored video. The Burl B2 Bomber I bought with my own money from Sweetwater. I'll link it below if you want to check it out. That is an affiliate link. Thank you so much in advance. And so I have a 30-day window of a return policy if I want to return it. So not a sponsored video. So just to give, this is the first video you're watching of all these converter comparisons. Let me just give you a brief overview of how all this was done over the last 3 sets of videos. And then I'm going to tell you which one is which. Okay, so we've done, over the last week, we've done 3 different stereo 2-track print track converters from 3 different companies. The Dangerous Music Convert AD+, the Neve, Rupert Neve MBC, Master Bus Converter, and now we're taking a look at the Burl B2 Bomber. Those are both, all 3 of those are used for the print track to print the final mix coming out through the console and all the hardware back into the DAW. And supposedly, according to all of you that have forced me to do this test, that if you use a higher end converter than my PreSonus Quantum 4848s, that we should yield better results. We ought to hear a little bit better of a final print track. At least that is the assumption. So what we did is we did a mix, and the mix that we did is by the country rock artist Barry Dridger. The name of the song is Bad For You. Make sure you go check out all his socials in the links in the description box below. Barry's an awesome artist. He's been very generous to supply this session, Bad For You. So we can do all these tests. Thank you so much, Barry. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to feature more Barry's music on this channel in the future. So I did a full mix with hardware, just like I normally would if Barry was a paying client. And first thing we did is we did our print track with the 4848, the PreSonus Quantum, the way I've always done it. Print it right back into the same session, not printing it to a separate machine, same session, printing it all back in at 48K, okay? Then what we did is we disconnected the PreSonus and we first did the Dangerous Music. And in this case, we hooked up the Burl. Didn't touch a single thing on the console, ran the print track through the Burl using the Burl clock, just like we did with the Neve and the Dangerous Music using their clock. And then listen back and forth, and that's what we did. So all 3 sets of videos for the Dangerous Music, for the Neve, and now the Burl, all of them were done with the same mix, done at the same time, within days of each other. So nothing has changed, so all the audio files are the same. The only thing that's changed is between those 3 series of videos, I would reprint the 4848 each time. So the print for the 4848 from the Dangerous Music set of videos is a physical different file from the Neves and from the Burls. And the reason why I did that was whenever you're working with analog gear, as you all know, every time you turn this stuff on and off, even if it's over a couple of day period, depending on how warm the gear was, there's all these little anomalies. So I wanted to make sure that when we were comparing the 4848 print to whatever box, in this case the Burl, that those 2 print tracks were within 10 minutes of each other, right? Because the electronics could change anytime you run audio through a console, every pass is going to sound just a hair bit different, possibly. It could. That's the way analog is. And when you have racks full of gear hooked up to the mix, and we do, that could be different too. But outside of that, everything else is the same. Not a fader's been touched, not an EQ move, not a pan, nothing, okay? So that's what's going on for these 3 sets of videos. If this is the first set you're here, you can check the link in the description box and you can go look at all of that, all those videos for those series. After this video, just like with the other 2 units, our good buddy David S.J. is going to take these files. He doesn't know which one is which, and he's going to do the deep dive analysis and do null tests and phase tests and EQ curves and all that stuff, so we can look at it visually from an analytical point of view to see what the differences are between the tracks, and does that kind of line up with what we think we're hearing, right? Really cool. That video will be part 3. Yeah, part 3, okay? So that's what's going on. So if you're just here for the first time, you can check the links in the description box. You can go watch all those videos. So let's talk about which one is which. Okay, so in the last video I said, go ahead and download them and listen to them. We had the blue track here in Studio One, and we had a green track, right? So which one is which? Well, the first one, the one in blue was the Burl B2 Bomber, and the one in green was the 4848. So print number 1 from the last video is the Burl, and print number 2 is the Quantum 4848. So if you downloaded these files in the last video, and if you haven't yet, because you haven't seen part 1, go watch part 1, download the files, bring them into your DAW, listen to them yourself. We'll do a quick little switch back and forth here just so we can recap, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts. Now that you know which one is which, if you did see part 1, leave some comments. Were you right? Were you wrong? Did you guess right? Now that you know which one is which, go back and listen again. Now here's the thing I'll tell you before we listen. I said this in the last video. Kind of the way I've been listening to this and giving my impressions on these prints is I'm only listening to the song from top to bottom, maybe twice. I'm not listening to this over and over and over and switching and switching and switching and switching, especially because I know which one is which and have always known which one is which. Now that you know which one is which, if you do that, remember, the brain is a powerful thing and the ears are a powerful thing. That if you know which one is which and you swear that there should be a difference between the Burl and the 4848, if you listen to this thing long enough, you're going to convince yourself there's a difference. So just like when you come in and you do your final tweaks on a mix, at least for me, right? I'll do a mix, I'll do a pass, and then I'll take a break, whether it's a couple of hours, whether it's the next day. And usually my first impressions are the right moves to make. It's the same thing with this. 1 listen, 2 listens. If you have to listen more than twice to pick out the differences, then your ears are playing tricks on you, and your brain and your ears are playing tricks on you. At least that's the way it is for me. So when we're going to take a listen, and I'm going to tell you what I think. Now, I've only done this before the recording of this video. I've only listened to this twice since I've printed it. I'm trying not to over-listen to it, and I'm going to tell you what I hear. Okay? So your job in this video is what? Just like always. Keep your eye on the solo button. We're going to switch from the blue, which is the Burl, to the green, which is the 4848, so we can hear the difference. Now remember, the Burl has transformers in it. The thing about the Burl B2 Bomber is that it's kind of marketed as, it's like simulating or emulating the sound of hitting tape, right? There's no way to take the transformers in and out of the circuit on the Burl like there is on the Dangerous Music in the Neve. So you don't have a choice. The Burl sounds like the Burl. There's not a lot of flexibility or tweakability on the Burl, like there are on the other 2 units, which is not a bad thing. I'm just telling you that, okay? The 4848 obviously doesn't have any transformers in it. So now that we know that it's supposed to sound like tape, does it? Now remember also, I'll tell you this, that this whole mix was done going through my Neve 542 Porticos, which are tape emulators. So we already got the sound of that, then we're hitting the Burl on top of it, which is maybe not something you'd want to do. Anyway, this is what we got, okay? So take a listen. We'll listen a bit here and see if you could pick out which one sounds different. If you can hear a difference, good set of monitors or studio headphones is preferred. Here we go. Keep your eye on the solo button. We'll start off with the Burl.
So use your fingers at any time, yeah.
Okay, there you go. So again, you can go download the files from video 1, and you can go in there and you can slice it and dice it and switch it back and forth as much as you want. We did a full playthrough in part 1 if you didn't see it. So there it is. So do you hear a difference? Now that you know which one is which, what is your thoughts? Have they changed? Have your opinions changed from part 1? Let me know in the comments below. Here's what I'm going to tell you. And again, remember this whole thing, and again, you can test this thing a million ways to Sunday, I would imagine, but the whole point of the test was, for me, with all 3 of these boxes, including the Burl, was how does it fit into my rig, my setup, right? Which is going to be different from yours, right? As I mentioned, the Burl is emulating tape to a degree. That's what they say right in their user manual. I read it, which is great. But again, this mix already ran through the 542 porticos when I printed it with the 4848. I didn't disengage those and then run it through the Burl because I wanted to keep it apples to apples. Because I have the 542s, and I love those things, by the way. Everyone that I know owns them. No one ever sells them. They're just great. Because I already have that, you can say, in my particular use case, the Burl, if you're going for the tape thing, I already got that, so I don't need the Burl for the tape thing. But again, what we're really testing here is, does the converter in and of itself yield a better result? Okay, that's the popular belief. High-end converters are going to sound better than lower-end converters. Okay, so we're doing a test. Not that PreSonus has a low-end converter in the 4848. Again, they don't make that interface anymore, but when they did, that was about a $1,500 to $1,700 interface. It's not a cheap interface. It's not a $200 Focusrite, right? Okay, it is their highest end interface. Okay, the Burl is about a $2,500 box, so they're more money, but they're in that ballpark, I guess you can say. We're not comparing a $200 unit to a $2,000 unit. We're comparing a $1,500 unit to a $2,000 unit, okay? So, for me, the whole thing with the Burl, the whole tape thing is kind of redundant, doesn't make sense. And we're really testing the converter. Now, on the Burl, you can't take the transformer in and out like you could on the Neve and like you could on the Dangerous Music, and we did that. If you watch those videos, even though I did 2 separate prints, you had 3 print tracks for the Dangerous Music set of videos and for the Neve set of videos, because we printed one without the transformer, one with, because I wanted to really compare the one without to compare it to the 4848. With the Burl, I don't have that opportunity because you can't just take it in and out. It's in. So what do I hear in this example? What I hear in this example, again, just like with the last video in part 1, and just like with the other units that we've tested, there is an incredibly subtle difference in this example, in my mind. Because we're hitting those transformers, in the Burl, I feel like I hear a tiny bit more compression, particularly on the snare, listening to the snare transient. And it feels like the kick drum may have a little bit more of a oomph to it on the bottom end. And again, we're talking really subtle, really subtle. Now, if I did not mix the 48, if I did not use the Neve porticos, which give that same kind of feel on the print track that has the 4848, if I took that away and then just used the Burl, my suspicion would be, and I'm not going to do it in this video, maybe for another video, that you would hear a little bit more of that tape thing, because it wouldn't be on the 4848, but it would be on the Burl. Make sense? So if I didn't own those Neves, and I didn't already run the whole mix through them, and then ran the mix through the Burl, there may be a little bit bigger of a difference. But again, this is for fitting into my rig. In other words, I'm not selling my Neve 542s to buy the Burl just for that feature. That doesn't make sense to me. From my situation, for your situation, if you don't have anything else in hardware that emulates tape and you want that kind of sound, the Burl will give you that sound, and that's really cool. So I hear a little bit more compression and a little bit more, just a tiny bit more in the very low end, okay? Outside of that, I really struggle to hear any real differences here. I listen to them on my vocals. I listen to them on 2 different sets of headphones. And I don't really hear a difference. Again, it's so incredibly subtle. So incredibly subtle. So again, for me, does the Burl fit into my workflow? In other words, again, the point of all these videos were, for all 3 boxes, were if I upgraded my converters from the 4848 to a higher end box, am I gonna get a little bit better of a result? Again, it shouldn't be massive, and it won't be massive. No one claims that there should be a 10 or 20% difference. Is there even a 5% improvement? I don't hear that. I don't hear it. They're so incredibly close that for me and my rig, as much as the Burl's a great piece of gear, just like the other 2 that we tested, it doesn't make sense for me because I'm not really gaining anything. Now, some people will say, and it's valid, and we're going to do a test on this too, that the advantage to having a separate print track box like the Burl, or like the Neve, or like the Dangerous Music, or the Lynx, or Orion, or Apogee, or whatever other one you like, Feral Fish, whatever. I haven't tested them all yet, right? Is that you could, and some engineers will print it to a different machine, a different computer, like a laptop, so they can print it at a higher resolution. Right? When you print it back in on the session like I'm doing here, this session's at 48K, so I gotta print it back in at 48K. But let's say you wanted to print it back in at 192, or 96, or 88, or whatever. By having a box like the Burl, you can do that on a separate machine. You can print it at a higher resolution. And some people have said to me, that makes all the difference in the world, just like they said the converter was gonna make all the difference in the world. That you wanna print it in a higher resolution, you're gonna hear a big difference between 192 and a 48 print. Really? Maybe you're right. My gut tells me I don't buy that, but you know what? We're gonna do some videos on that too in the near future. Trust me. Well, we're gonna set up one of these things on a laptop on a separate box, and we're gonna print them in at 44.1, 48, 88, 96, 192, 2050, 4070, whatever the highest resolution we could print. And then we're gonna listen back to them all and see if we can hear the difference. That's what we're going to do. We'll see when we're going to report those findings later for another video. But, so if that's your gig, you want to print it back in on a separate box so you have those flexibility, or you like that workflow, or your computer, the computer you're doing your mixing, your session is, can't handle it or whatever, then there's an argument to have something like a Burl here in this example to print it in onto a different computer. That makes total sense to me. That makes total sense to me. I'm not convinced I need to do that because unless the higher resolution really yields a better result, I'm not convinced of that. And unless I can hear that difference, I'm not convinced of that, and maybe I will be convinced of that. But aside from that, again, just listening to the 2 from a converter point of view, there is a little bit of a change in the Burl, again, because of the whole transformer thing, but it is incredibly, incredibly subtle. And if that's the only thing that changes, if that's the only real change, then for my particular use case, the Burl is not staying, it's gonna go back. Just like the Neve went back, just like the Dangerous Music went back. It's not that they're not great pieces of equipment, it really depends on your particular setup. And in this setup, so far, the PreSonus Quantum 4848, the converters in that box sound fine. It's not that the other boxes aren't better, they're all good. I mean, some people argue, and I've had people tell me, and again, I don't know if it's true. I mean, I'm only telling you things that I've had people in the industry tell me, and I don't know if it's true. There's only a couple of companies that make these converter chips anyway. And then all these boxes basically have the same converter in them. Now, do they really? I don't know. Who knows? I know when you look at the spec sheet, some of these boxes have more headroom and stuff, but again, how accurate? I've had people tell me in the industry that you don't believe what you read on the spec sheets all the time. So again, I don't really know. And at the end of the day, we can go way down the rabbit hole, we can go way into the weeds on this, and that's fun to do. And Dave will do a little of that when he does his analytical deep dive video. But for me, at the end of the day, I'm a simple man, right? I throw them up. Do I hear any real difference in that? Do I hear an improvement in the print track by simply running it through a box that costs $4 grand or $3 grand or $2,500? And the answer to the question for me is no. I think the PreSonus Quantum 4848 converters are fine. They sound fine to me. And in some of these tests, I can't hear a difference at all. Some of you may hear a huge difference, and that's okay too. So for me, the Burl is only sticking around for a short period of time so we can do that higher resolution print track test. I got to rig that up. We'll do it all through the Burl because that's probably the easiest thing for me to do, because that can do multiple sample rates. So we're going to do that. But aside from that, and again, unless that yields the result where it's like, yes, I need to print at a higher resolution because that is giving me a better result, and therefore maybe the Burl, or again, I guess you can use any audio interface or any converter that will allow you to do that, depending on the specs of your interface. But if that yields a better result, then maybe the Burl would stick around simply for that. But aside from that, no, the Burl would go back. There's not enough of a change there for me personally in this particular rig. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And again, as I say in all these videos, be cool, be professional, don't knock other people, don't be nasty to other people. We all hear things differently. This is so subjective, this subject. It really, truly is. None of us are right or wrong. And I'm not trying to convince you of one thing or the other. All I'm doing is sharing with you what my experience is. And I love the fact that you guys asked me to do this test because I've always been curious about this topic. And so now I know for myself in the room what makes sense for me. And hopefully this information will help you decide what makes sense for you. It may be, you may totally agree with me. You may 100% disagree with everything I've said in this video and in all the other videos we've done around this topic, and that's totally fine. If it makes sense for you and you hear things differently, that's not a bad thing. We're all different. And so you got to remember that when you're reading people's comments and you get all hot under the collar and you get triggered and you want to start firing things off, take a step back, man. None of us are wrong here. It's all subjective. And it's all in the spirit of fun. And this whole channel and this whole test is all around just trying to learn and get knowledge. That's all it is. So be cool. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know what you would do if you were me. And until the next video, where you're going to see Dave do the deep dive analysis, but then what we're going to do, and then we're going to wrap up this video. Now that I have all the print tracks from the Dangerous Music, from the Neve, and from the Burl, maybe we're going to put them all into one session and we're going to compare them, all three of those, to the 4848 and see when we put them all in the same session now, do they sound a little different? I don't know. That'll probably be for another video. But until then, thanks so much, guys, for watching. I appreciate what you guys, all the support you guys give. And until the next video, I've been Dave with Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com. Thanks so much for watching me, everybody. Enjoy the music, and I'll see you guys in the next video.